want to bring in Chuck Marino, former Homeland Security senior advisor and author of Terrorists on the Border and in Our Country. You know, one of the first things that jumps out at me when we see this, the president has said words like demented and deranged. Is the fight against these deportations really about due process, or do people really believe that those who are demented and deranged have a right to be here in the country?
Well, Nick, I mean, quite candidly, I think the issue is should public safety threats and national security threats that entered the country illegally and were allowed to do so under the previous administration remain in the country and remain a threat to the American people? Look, we're talking about the Alien Enemies Act here, which is a law. Disregarding how old it is, that doesn't matter. It's still on the books. And I've got to tell you, President Trump is not the first president to target these public safety and national security threats. We saw Barack Obama, when he was president, do the same thing to the tune of 450,000 deportations a year for 8 years straight. So I don't understand what the outrage is here. This has been done before. The American public agree with it. We saw that as a result of the last presidential election and where this issue ranked with the American people. So for the courts to insert themselves here and say that this doesn't apply, I believe is disingenuous.
And Charles, I'm so glad to hear you say just because the rule is old doesn't mean it isn't still applicable, because this is what it's all about. Mr. Trump campaigned on the promise of getting people who are bad for the country out of the country. It appears to be that's what he's doing.
Absolutely. And look, he's rightfully declared it a national emergency. We know how this has impacted our homeland security, and it will continue to do so unless we get these dangerous cartel and gang members out of the country. They've already been designated as foreign terrorist organizations, a move that I support and actually called for 3.5 years ago in my book. It's time we step up the operations, step up the aggressiveness against these cartels and these gangs. They now operate very similar to Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They don't care how many Americans they kill. We see this each and every year via fentanyl. They will work with our foreign adversaries to do that. And the administration, again, is taking the right approach here. I think ultimately the courts side with the Trump administration on this.
Charles, I'm glad you said that. I have about a minute left, and I do want to know what you think about this. Do you think the Justice Department will defy the judge's order to hand over information about these flights and the individuals they say are definitely a threat to American citizens?
You know, Nick, if that's what it comes down to, where the intelligence needs to be shared to show a connection between these gangs and the cartels and these folks that are being deported, I think that will be easily made here. But, you know, I think the administration has a compelling story. They're on the right side of this. It's good for the country. It's good for the American people. And enough is enough. At some point in time, we need to enforce the laws of this country to remain a civilized society. No civilized society has survived without law and order. This is a fact of history. I know sometimes history can be stubborn, a stubborn fact, but this is not the time to play these games with the safety and security of the American people.
Chuck Marino, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.